human remains found in Montgomery County earlier this month have been confirmed as those of Felicia Johnson.
She's the 24-year-old San Diego woman who disappeared while visiting Houston in April of last year, and investigators are still looking for the man charged in her death. Those remains were found in Sam Houston National Forest back on February 7th.
In the heart of Houston, a city known for its vibrant culture and bustling streets, a young woman named Felicia Johnson embarked on what was meant to be a promising journey. At 24, Felicia traveled from her home in San Diego to Houston, seeking new opportunities and experiences. But as days turned into weeks, her family and friends were left in agonizing suspense, their calls and messages unanswered. The vibrant life that once radiated from Felicia seemed to have vanished without a trace. As we delve into the intricate details of this case, we invite you to join us on True Crime Watch HD. If you find our in-depth explorations compelling, please consider subscribing to stay updated on our latest investigations. Felicia's journey to Houston began with aspirations of securing employment at an adult entertainment venue. However, after an unsuccessful interview, she found herself navigating the unfamiliar streets of Houston. On the evening of April 16, 2022, she left her hotel, the Intercontinental Houston Medical Center, and that was the last time she was seen alive. Concern grew rapidly among her loved ones when attempts to reach her proved futile. The discovery of her blood-stained phone in Bear Creek Pioneers Park deepened the mystery. What could have transpired between her departure from the hotel and the abandonment of her phone in such a desolate location? Investigations led authorities to a man named Chukwuebuka Nwobado, aged 28. Evidence suggested that he had arranged transportation for Felicia on the night she disappeared, leading her to his apartment on South Richmond Avenue. Further findings indicated that Felicia met a tragic end within those walls, with her personal belongings later discarded in Bear Creek Pioneers Park. As the investigation progressed, more unsettling details emerged. Nwobado's digital footprint revealed searches on topics such as how to be a serial killer and how to get away with murder. Purchases of items like a mechanical saw, trash bags, and towels further painted a grim picture. Despite these findings, Nwobado was not immediately apprehended and remains at large. The case took another turn when, on February 7, 2023, human remains were discovered in the Sam Houston National Forest. Dental records confirmed these remains belonged to Felicia Johnson, bringing a somber closure to her family's search. Houston is a city filled with life, opportunities, and a certain charm that draws people in. But beneath its vibrant lights, there are shadows, dark corners where danger lurks, waiting for an unsuspecting soul to cross its path. On April 16, 2022, Felicia Johnson unknowingly stepped into one of those shadows. That night, Felicia left her hotel, the Intercontinental Houston Medical Center, a 4-star establishment located in the heart of the city. The surveillance footage showed her walking out into the humid Texas night. She had been in Houston for just a short while, but she had big plans that, unfortunately, would never come to fruition. Felicia had traveled from San Diego, California, to Houston, hoping to secure a job that could provide her with financial stability. Reports later revealed that she had applied for a position at an adult entertainment club called CoverGirls, but her application had been denied. With no job prospects and likely feeling a mix of disappointment and uncertainty, Felicia was left figuring out her next move. Her social media activity that night was unusual. Normally, she would post frequent updates, pictures, status updates, something to let her family and friends know she was okay. But on April 16th, her social media went silent. And for someone like Felicia, who was constantly connected to her online world, this was the first sign that something was wrong. Felicia's trip wasn't entirely aimless. Investigators would later discover that before arriving in Houston, she had been communicating with a man online. His name was Chukwuebuka Nwobado, a 28-year-old Nigerian-American who lived in the city. The two had connected through an online escort service, where Felicia had advertised her companionship for a fee. Their conversation, which had started days before, was simple at first, casual discussions about meeting up and arranging a price. but the tone of the exchange suggested that Chukwuebuka wasn't just looking for company. He was planning something much more sinister. Felicia agreed to meet him on the night of April 16th for a payment of $500. This wasn't unusual. Many women in similar lines of work often met with strangers for quick money. What was unusual, however, was how quickly everything went silent after their meeting. According to subpoenaed Uber records, it was Chukwuebuka himself who ordered a ride to pick up Felicia from her hotel. Surveillance cameras at the hotel captured her leaving around 3 a.m. and getting into the Uber he had arranged. The driver's destination? A complex on Windchase Boulevard, a place that, at the time, seemed insignificant but would later become a crucial part of the case. Windchase Boulevard was where Chukwuebuka had previously lived. It wasn't his current residence, but for some reason, he instructed the Uber to drop Felicia there. When the car arrived, an individual matching her description was seen exiting the vehicle and walking toward a parked car, a silver Honda sedan. This car was registered to Chukwuebuka Nwobado. Instead of staying at Windchase Boulevard, he picked Felicia up himself and drove her to his actual residence, a modest apartment on South Richmond Avenue. This was the last confirmed sighting of Felicia Johnson. No one saw her leave. No one heard from her again. She had vanished. When Felicia didn't respond to texts or calls, her father, Kevin Johnson, grew worried. This wasn't like his daughter. She was independent, yes, but she always kept in touch, especially when traveling. The silence was deafening. On April 16th, the very same day Felicia met with Chukwuebuka, her father tried reaching out to her multiple times. He sent texts, made calls, nothing. Then he did something that would later prove to be the first real step in uncovering the truth. He reached out to a friend in Houston. This friend, who was also deeply concerned, tracked Felicia's phone using GPS. What they found was chilling. Felicia's phone wasn't in the hotel. It wasn't anywhere near the places she was last seen. Instead, it was located in Bear Creek Pioneers Park, a heavily wooded area about 25 miles away from her hotel. The phone in Bear Creek Park. Armed with this information, Felicia's friend drove to Bear Creek Park, following the GPS coordinates that led to the last known location of her phone. What they found was disturbing. The phone was covered in blood. Not just a little blood, enough to make it clear that something violent had happened. Felicia's purse was found not long after, discarded nearby. Her identification, personal belongings, everything was there, except for Felicia. Her father, now fully convinced that his daughter was in serious danger, immediately flew to Houston. As soon as he landed, he went straight to the Houston Police Department, filing a missing person report. But what he encountered was frustrating. The police weren't acting with urgency. They asked routine questions, took down details, but Kevin could feel it. This case wasn't a priority for them. To the authorities, Felicia was just another young woman who had gone missing under suspicious circumstances. There was no immediate evidence of foul play, and because she was an adult, there was little that could be done in the first few hours. Kevin wasn't having it. Desperate for answers, Kevin started his own search. He contacted local media, reached out to community leaders, and got in touch with activists who could help bring awareness to the case. Soon, flyers with Felicia's face were plastered across Houston. But it wasn't just the family who was pushing for answers. Activists like Quanell X, the leader of the new Black Panther Nation, took up Felicia's case, using his platform to raise public awareness. He pointed out something chilling. Felicia wasn't the first dark-skinned woman to disappear under similar circumstances. In fact, 4 other women had gone missing in Houston over the last 5 months. All of them had met with men for money, all of them had vanished, and all of them had been found dead. This was no coincidence. Was Houston dealing with a serial predator? The deeper investigators looked into Chukwuebuka Nwobado, the more unsettling details emerged. He wasn't just an average guy. He had been investigated before, for attempted sexual assault. A previous case alleged that he had tried to force himself on a woman inside his car, but the charges were later dropped when the victim refused to testify. Why would a woman drop charges against a man who had attacked her? Fear? Threats? Or was there something even more sinister at play? Whatever the reason, it meant that Chuckwibucka was free to walk the streets. Free to meet Felicia. Free to lure her to his apartment. And free to do whatever he wanted behind closed doors. It wasn't until weeks later that detectives uncovered what might be the most disturbing aspect of this case. A search of Chuckwibucka's phone and computer revealed something truly horrifying. He had been researching how to get away with murder. Among his Google searches were phrases like, "How to be a serial killer," "Can bleach destroy DNA?" "Most wooded areas in Houston," "How to delete everything permanently." These weren't just random searches. They were calculated, intentional, premeditated. Felicia Johnson had walked into a trap, one that was set long before she ever met Chuckwibucka Nwobado. But the investigation was just beginning. What do you think happened that night? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. With the discovery of Felicia Johnson's blood-stained phone and purse in Bear Creek Pioneers Park, it was becoming clear that this was not just a missing persons case, it was something far worse. The Houston Police Department was now under pressure to take action, not just from Felicia's family but from the growing public outrage. Yet, despite the mounting evidence, no immediate arrests were made. But investigators were about to uncover details that would turn this case into something even more disturbing. In cases like these, every second counts. Investigators began piecing together Felicia's last known movements using surveillance footage from her hotel, Uber records, and nearby businesses. At 3 a.m. on April 16th, Felicia was seen leaving the Intercontinental Houston Medical Center and getting into an Uber ordered by Chuckwibucka Nwobado. The Uber took her to Windchase Boulevard, where Nwobado had previously lived. Surveillance footage from an apartment complex in the area showed a man matching Nwobado's description waiting for her in a silver Honda sedan. Felicia got out of the Uber and into his car. Minutes later, the Honda drove away, heading towards South Richmond Avenue, Nwobado's actual residence. That was the last time Felicia was ever seen alive. This information alone wasn't enough to make an arrest, but it was enough for police to get a search warrant for Nwobado's residence. On May 13, 2022, investigators executed a search warrant at Nwobado's South Richmond Avenue apartment. What they found inside was horrifying. Blood splatters on the bedroom walls and hallway floor. Traces of blood on a large kitchen knife. Used latex gloves. Receipts for a list of items that made investigators' stomachs turn. The receipts revealed that on April 16th and 17th, the suspect had gone to Walmart and Home Depot to purchase a flashlight, latex gloves, large trash bags, cleaning supplies, a pruning saw. These weren't just random household items. They were the exact things someone would need to clean up and dispose of a body. Forensic testing confirmed what detectives feared the most. The blood in the apartment belonged to Felicia Johnson. The amount of blood present suggested that Felicia had suffered a fatal injury inside that apartment. With no indication that she had received medical attention, authorities believed she had died soon after arriving at the suspect's residence. But there was one problem. Her body was nowhere to be found. A suspicious digital trail. While officers searched his home, they also seized Nwobado's cell phone and computer. If his apartment had revealed disturbing clues, his digital history was even more shocking. Investigators found search queries like, "How to be a serial killer," "How to get away with murder," "Can bleach destroy DNA?" "What does vinegar do to blood?" "Most wooded areas in Houston." "How long does it take for a body to decompose?" And perhaps the most chilling search of all, how to make someone disappear forever. It was no longer a question of whether Felicia had been murdered. It was now a question of where her body had been hidden. Through phone records, GPS data, and transaction history, investigators reconstructed what likely happened after Felicia arrived at Nwobodo's apartment. April 16, 3:30 a.m., Felicia arrives at Nwobodo's home. April 16, 4:45 a.m., his car is seen leaving the apartment complex. This is the same time frame when Felicia's phone last pinged in Bear Creek Pioneers Park. April 16, 6 a.m., security cameras capture Nwobodo entering a Walmart with a bandaged hand. He purchases towels, trash bags, and a flashlight. April 17, 8 a.m., he is seen at Home Depot, purchasing a saw and more trash bags. Everything pointed to one horrifying conclusion. Felicia had been dismembered, and her remains scattered across different locations to make it harder to find her. But still, there was no physical evidence tying him to disposing of her body. And because of that, police didn't have enough to charge him with murder just yet. On May 13, 2022, police finally took Chukwuebuka Nwobodo into custody. Inside his car, they found a loaded pistol, loose latex gloves, a shovel, a large kitchen knife with dried blood. Despite the overwhelming evidence, investigators couldn't officially charge him with Felicia's murder at the time. So, incredibly, he was released. And then, he disappeared. To this day, Nwobodo remains on the run. He has not been seen since his release in May 2022. 4 months, Felicia's family had no closure. No body had been found, and her suspected killer had vanished. Then, on February 7, 2023, an unexpected discovery was made in the Sam Houston National Forest. A landscape worker stumbled upon a black garbage bag, torn open by the elements. Inside were skeletal remains. Authorities immediately suspected the remains belonged to Felicia, but forensic testing had to be done to confirm it. When the DNA results came back, they were devastating. It was her. For Kevin Johnson, the news was bittersweet. His daughter was finally found, but not in the way he had hoped. Her remains had been scattered and left to decompose, meaning that only part of her body was ever recovered. What happened to the rest? Did animals carry it away? Did Nwobodo hide pieces in different locations? No one knows. Where is Nwobodo now? As of 2024, Chukwuebuka Nwobodo remains a fugitive. Despite an active arrest warrant, he has managed to avoid capture, and there are no confirmed sightings of him. Some believe he fled the country, possibly returning to Nigeria, where it would be much harder to extradite him. Others believe he's hiding in the U.S., possibly using fake identities. One thing is certain, he is still out there. And as long as he remains free, Felicia Johnson's family will never have full justice. The unanswered questions. Was Felicia his first victim? Could he have done this before? How did he escape after being released? Why did authorities let him go when they had so much evidence? What do you think happened? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. With the discovery of Felicia Johnson's remains in the Sam Houston National Forest, one major question was finally answered. She was no longer missing. But this revelation did not bring justice. Instead, it fueled an even greater frustration. Her suspected killer, Chukwuebuka Nwobodo, was still at large. More than a year had passed since his initial arrest and release, and during that time, he had completely vanished without a trace. How did he manage to slip away? Where was he hiding? And, most disturbingly, was he still a danger to others? A system that failed. One of the biggest frustrations in this case was how Nwobodo was allowed to disappear in the first place. Let's break it down. By May 2022, police already had surveillance footage of Felicia getting into an Uber sent by Nwobodo. GPS data showing her last known movements leading to his residence. Physical evidence, her blood, in his apartment. A search history filled with disturbing queries like how to be a serial killer, how to clean up DNA, and how to make someone disappear forever. Receipts for suspicious purchases, including a saw, trash bags, and latex gloves, all bought right after Felicia's disappearance. Yet, despite all of this, he wasn't immediately charged with murder. Instead, he was only arrested on unrelated charges, such as possession of a weapon. And then, he was released. This was the turning point, the moment where law enforcement lost their best opportunity to capture a killer. The moment he walked free, he vanished. Was this planned? Many now wonder, did Nwobodo plan his escape before his arrest? It's a chilling thought, but there's evidence to suggest that he might have. His Google searches included queries like how to disappear and cheapest places to live under $1,000. He had past experience with the law. He knew how the system worked. He was financially stable enough to flee. He had ties outside the U.S., which could have helped him relocate. 4 months, authorities tried to track him down, but each lead went cold. Once police officially charged Nwobodo with Felicia's murder, he was added to the National Fugitive Database. His photo was released to the public, and law enforcement agencies across the country were notified. But this wasn't just a local search, it quickly turned into an international manhunt. Federal authorities got involved, expanding the search beyond the U.S. The Nigerian government was contacted, as investigators believed he may have fled to Nigeria. Airport security footage was reviewed, checking if he had left the country. Despite these efforts, no concrete leads emerged. For many, this was infuriating. How could a man with so much evidence against him just disappear? But the truth is, it's not as difficult as people think. There are 3 primary ways fugitives like Chukwuebuka Nwobodo can disappear. Leaving the country. If he fled to Nigeria, bringing him back would be extremely difficult. Nigeria does not have a formal extradition treaty with the U.S., meaning authorities can't force the Nigerian government to send him back. Living off the grid. Some fugitives stay in the U.S., but they change their identities, use cash only, and move frequently. If Nwobodo went underground, he could still be in the country, hiding in a place where no one knows him. Altering appearance and identity. A man with resources could easily change his look, use fake identification, or even obtain a false passport. For now, law enforcement is still searching, but until there's a major breakthrough, he remains a ghost. Felicia's family fights for justice. For Felicia's family, the pain of her loss never faded. Her father, Kevin Johnson, has continued to speak out, demanding justice for his daughter.
However, I have yet to be provided with any information as it relates to her last known whereabouts, which I believe to be the Cover Girl nightclub. Nor have I at this time been provided with any pertinent information as it relates to the surveillance footage at the Cover Girl nightclub that could easily confirm or deny Felicia's identity.
In interviews, he has been vocal about law enforcement's failure in this case, saying, "They had him. He was right there. And they let him go. Now my daughter's murderer is free, while we have to live every day knowing she's gone." Kevin has worked tirelessly to keep Felicia's story in the public eye, organizing rallies, reaching out to media, and even offering rewards for information leading to Nwobodo's capture. But the fight for justice has taken a heavy toll on him. He has suffered from PTSD and severe stress, knowing his daughter's killer is still out there. The weight of the case has strained his health, leading to hospital visits. Financially, it has been draining. He has spent much of his own money to keep the search alive. Despite all of this, he refuses to give up. For him, bringing Nwobodo to justice isn't just about Felicia, it's about making sure no one else suffers the same fate. Could there be other victims? One of the most disturbing possibilities in this case is that Felicia may not have been Nwobodo's only victim. When police searched his phone, they found photos of multiple deceased women, a picture of a dismembered body, online conversations with other women he had arranged to meet. This raised a terrifying question. Was he a serial killer? Did he lure other women the same way? Are there more victims that we don't even know about? Was Felicia's case just the one that finally exposed him? The fact that he was researching how to become a serial killer makes it even more chilling. Until he is captured, we may never know the full truth. Where does the case stand now? As of 2024, Nwobado is still at large. The case remains open, but leads have slowed. Felicia's family continues to push for action, but frustration is growing. Some have called for a higher reward for information leading to his arrest, more aggressive international cooperation to find him, increased public awareness to keep pressure on authorities. This case is a tragic example of how the justice system can fail victims, especially when a suspect is given the opportunity to escape. What happens next? Felicia Johnson's case is far from over. Her family will keep fighting. Law enforcement will continue tracking leads. The public must remain vigilant, keeping her name alive. The question remains, will Nwobado ever be caught? Final thoughts. We want to hear from you. Do you think Nwobado is still in the U.S., or has he fled overseas? What should law enforcement do differently to catch fugitives like him? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. The case of Felicia Johnson is far from over. Even though her remains have been found and her tragic fate confirmed, the man accused of taking her life is still out there, walking free, hiding in the shadows. For Felicia's family, every day that passes without an arrest is another day of pain. They wake up knowing that the man responsible for her murder has not been held accountable. How can someone with so much evidence against him still be missing? How has the justice system failed so miserably? The fight for justice continues, but the road ahead remains long and uncertain. After Nwobado's release from custody on May 13, 2022, police continued to gather evidence against him. What they found was overwhelming. Blood, receipts for tools used to dispose of a body, and a digital footprint filled with disturbing searches. The moment they had enough to officially charge him with Felicia's murder, he was nowhere to be found. The last confirmed sighting of Chukwuebuka Nwobado was on the day of his release. He left Houston, and investigators initially believed he may have traveled to another state. There were rumors that he had crossed into Mexico, where tracking him would be significantly harder. Some reports suggested that he may have used fraudulent documents to board a flight, possibly heading to Nigeria. But nothing concrete was ever found. Law enforcement lost his trail, and every new lead turned cold before they could act on it. Was there someone helping him? This is a question that has haunted investigators for over a year. Did he have someone waiting for him after he was released? Did he have financial support that allowed him to disappear? Could he have had connections within law enforcement that tipped him off before an arrest warrant was issued? One thing is clear. Someone doesn't just vanish into thin air unless they know how to. This suggests that Nwobado had a plan in place long before his arrest. Authorities believe that if he had help, that person could still be in Houston, covering for him or possibly funding his escape. If Nwobado did leave the U.S., the chances of bringing him back become extremely complicated. Nigeria does not have a formal extradition treaty with the United States. This means that if he is hiding in Nigeria, authorities cannot legally force the Nigerian government to hand him over. The longer he stays hidden, the harder he is to track. Time allows fugitives to change identities, blend in, and create new lives. There is no international arrest warrant against him yet. This means that even if a foreign country locates him, there is no direct legal requirement to return him. The U.S. government can still negotiate with Nigerian authorities, but these types of international negotiations take years, if they ever happen at all. This is one of the most frustrating parts of this case, knowing that he could be living freely somewhere, while Felicia's family remains trapped in grief. If authorities do manage to locate and arrest Nwobado, there will be no doubt about his fate. The evidence against him is overwhelming, and he would face multiple charges, including first-degree murder, tampering with evidence, abuse of a corpse. Even without a full body recovery, prosecutors believe they have enough to secure a conviction. Felicia's blood in his apartment is one of the strongest pieces of evidence. Forensic experts confirmed that the amount of blood found was consistent with a violent death, making it impossible for him to argue that she simply left on her own. His Google search history also proves that this was a premeditated crime. He had been planning this long before Felicia arrived in Houston. If convicted, he would likely receive life in prison without parole or even the death penalty, depending on the trial. But for any of this to happen, he must first be found. The Johnson family has been living a nightmare since April 16, 2022. They spent months searching for Felicia, hoping she was alive. They lived through the discovery of her blood-soaked phone and purse, knowing deep down that she was probably gone. They waited an entire year before her remains were finally found. And now, they wake up every day knowing that her killer is still free. For Felicia's father, Kevin Johnson, this pain has become unbearable. He has spoken in interviews about his struggle with PTSD. The stress of the case has caused serious health problems. He has been forced to relive the horror over and over again, with no justice in sight. Yet, despite everything, he refuses to give up. He continues to push for more media coverage, organize protests, and demand that authorities do more to bring Nwobodo to justice. Why this case still matters. Felicia's story is not just about her. Her case represents a bigger problem. The way violent crimes against women, especially women of color, are often dismissed by authorities. Why did it take so long for police to take her case seriously? Why was Nwobodo released when there was clear evidence against him? How many other women have suffered a similar fate but never received justice? These are the questions that need to be asked. The sad reality is that if Felicia had been a white woman from a wealthy background, this case may have been handled differently. Her family deserves justice, not just for Felicia, but for all the women who have been ignored by the system. A call to action. We cannot let this case fade away. If you have any information about Nwobodo's whereabouts, contact authorities immediately. Share Felicia's story. Keep talking about her case. Demand accountability from law enforcement. This isn't just about one man on the run, it's about holding the justice system accountable for letting this happen in the first place. Felicia's story is not over. And we won't stop until her killer is brought to justice. More than 2 years have passed since Felicia's disappearance. Her body has been found, but her family still doesn't have justice. Her suspected killer remains missing. The system has failed her time and time again. But we have the power to keep her memory alive. If you've followed this case, don't let it be forgotten. Share her story. Demand justice. Support her family. And most importantly, if you know something, say something. Because as long as Nwobodo remains free, Felicia's case will remain unfinished.